Welcome to the Arseholics podcast. It is Tuesday night after the Monday night, which was after the Sunday evening. That was epic for Arsenal fans all over the world. And I've got a man who was there at the game who can help us indulge in everything that was good about an amazing victory against our arch deep dark Sauron level nemesis.
I love the intro.
I mean, I'm really feeling it, man. You've got me, Raj, here, and Mize, who's getting ready to into it, is with me. Aaron is still traveling around the world somewhere. No one knows where he is. In fact, I don't know. He may not even know where he is, but he's somewhere, and I'm sure he's looking forward to listening to our podcast just as much as the rest of you have been. So listen, if you are listening to this before we get into it, because it's going to be so much fun, please do make sure you subscribe to the podcast. I often forget to say it. And, I'm going to put that down to the only reason that people don't subscribe after these episodes. So please subscribe, share it, like it. If you are watching this live, which I'm not sure anyone has joined live right yet, but if you are, please, whether it's this episode or future episodes, please get in the comments and chat to us. It's well fun. Yeah. I'm going to chat to Mize now. Mize, are you sober yet from Sunday?
I am. Yeah, Sunday was, as you'd expect, a very heavy one. Lots of pre-drinking. We met up. Went with my cousin John again, fellow Arsenal fan. We met up pretty early and we got a lot of drinks in. But at the same time, we were being a little bit cautious or careful with how much we were, how intoxicated we were going to get, because getting to Tottenham and going around Tottenham and getting into the stadium and all of that is a bit dodgy. People who've done the North London derby or have done Spurs away will know what I mean. But yeah. I mean, to be honest, hangover or not, the win and the performance would have been more than enough to cure any sort of hangover I might have had on Monday. And I'm still in that kind of like just enjoying that, that win, still in euphoria really, 2 days on. So yeah, I can't wait to get into it, man.
And probably one of the reasons is because of the absolute pain that you and I went through when we went there last year. And apart from maybe the first 5 minutes of last year's game where it looked like it was like kind of fairly even, we basically just took a massive battering on a cold evening. I want to say it was cold. Was it even cold? I'm not sure, but it was an evening, and it was not fun at all. And I've got terrible memories of it. And so this was just redemption for you, wasn't it, mate?
Yeah, exactly. Like it was like all the more sweet and satisfying, just the fact that what happened in May, and we previewed the episode. In the last episode, we previewed the game and we talked about how we thought it was going to go and where the two teams are now. And the performance that these guys put in, the Arsenal team put in, it tells us everything that we needed to know about how much we've come on since that result in May and where Spurs are now since that they beat us comprehensively. And we didn't just win, like we didn't just turn up and win. To a certain extent, we just sort of took the piss, really. I felt like, not gonna lie, a lot of the game is a little bit of a blur. As I mentioned, I was pretty drunk, but came home and tried to catch up on all the post-match stuff and highlights and everything. And watching it back, I mean, like the celebrations at the end, Ramsdale giving it back to the fans, Martinelli controlling the ball off his back. All of that stuff, the scarf going up on the spider cam, all of that stuff. Like we basically went there. We went to White Hart Lane or Tottenham Stadium, whatever it's called now, and just felt like we just sort of took the piss. And very, very satisfying win, as you say, considering what happened in May. I wanted to ask you, Raj, because you obviously, none of us were really that confident except for Nero. I think you and Aaron predicted losses, like predicted Spurs were going to win. I said a draw. So I'm quite interested just to kick off the episode as well. Just what you're given that you thought we were going to lose, were you pretty surprised with either how we played or how Spurs set up? like, just want to get your thoughts, really.
I'm surprised with all those things. If you recall, I mean, I did think we were going to lose. A large driver of why I thought we were going to lose is because of all those narratives and all those things that have just been bubbling. And so, one of the main things that was bubbling was this whole us getting charged by the FA 2 weeks in a row. And I was worried that the officials in this game were going to just use that to be able to control us a little bit, not let us kind of find a voice, not let us complain about decisions. And Tottenham were going to, know that we would be a bit anxious in that regard and maybe take advantage of that, feel a little bit more confident. The other thing was the Harry Kane narrative, about Jimmy Greaves's record, 2 goals, needed to break it. He always gets a goal against us. If he's not playing well, then it's a dive and a penalty anyway. So it's always going to be a goal against us, it feels like. Yeah. The memory from last season. And the fact, mate, that when we were there last season, the Tottenham atmosphere, credit to them last season, the atmosphere of the fans was just like, it was so good and it was hostile. I thought all those things would happen. And I also thought, right, that, again, your point about how we set up and stuff. I remember when we were getting into it, it seemed very clear. I think we both agreed on something very basic, which was that if Tottenham were to defend or not get on the front foot, then they're going to get completely screwed because we will silence the crowd by having possession. We will knock it around and they will lose their biggest asset, which is the crowd, and the crowd will start getting on their backs. So I thought there was just no way in which Conte wouldn't say, listen, we need to just try and dominate the ball. And I'm going to set us up in a way where we're going to try and dominate the ball, where we're going to try and get the supporters on our side. Even if they don't have the ball, just be aggressive, kind of, get, maybe even if they're going to make a few fouls at the beginning, like go for it, show that and get the crowd riled up. I thought all those things would happen. Conte's really smart managers, really kind of, experienced. But none of those things happened. None of the narratives that I mentioned happened. None of the ways in which I thought Conte would set them up happened. And I absolutely just did not think that they'd be so naive in how they set up to give players like Partey and Odegaard the space that they did. And we'll get into it. But it was just that I did not in a million years think Spurs would be so bad. And the stats, right? And we can get into the stats later. The stats paint no picture of what the game was like. Because, there are games sometimes where a team completely dominates the other one, completely dominates and gets a goal, gets 2 goals, and then goes, you know what? Now we're gonna have to rest in a smart way. Let's take our foot off the gas. And the other team will try and come back into the game. So they will have more possession and they will have more efforts as a result. But the team that have already got the lead are quite happy to kind of try and be resilient and defend. And that's basically what happened in that game. We were so good. We were so good to have that 2-0 lead. We did the smart thing and kind of, just tried to manage the game in the second half. So the stats actually show possession was quite even, attempts were even. The stats basically suggest, if you just looked at the stats, it would suggest that the game was won by one team that was more clinical than the other. That's just not true. It was a masterclass in that first half. And I remember it was funny, right, when we were messaging in the game and I was asking you how, whether it looked as good, when it looks as good, in person as it does on Sky, because on Sky, on TV, watching on TV, you get all the angles, you can see all the space. And I was so happy for you that you were almost like, too buzzing and too drunk to almost analyze the game.
No analysis, no tactical analysis at all. Yeah.
But how was it like though? Fine, no tactical analysis and all that, understandably. And I know where were you in the lower? Was it lower tier?
Yeah, again? It's quite similar to where we sat last time we went. Lower tier behind the goal. So that we basically had a corner of the ground that the away fans, the Arsenal fans. So I was kind of not directly behind the goal, but behind the goal as opposed to facing the like 6-yard line or the 18-yard line. Like. I mean, the stuff you mentioned about the atmosphere last season, like we both pointed it out. We both noticed it, obviously, not picked up on it, but, it was very, very obvious how much the atmosphere in the game last season contributed to the result and the Spurs performance, as you said. And we've mentioned that a couple of times when we've spoken about their stadium and the atmosphere it can generate. But I think, like you say, man, like how well Arsenal played genuinely how well Arsenal played, and obviously the fact we got 2 first half goals, it was like chalk and cheese compared to last season in terms of the Spurs fans. Like, I can't remember. It was all Arsenal. Like, obviously, away games generally, Arsenal fans are pretty good. They are very good, and they tend to just sing throughout non-stop. And obviously, if you're 2-0 up in a North London derby away, that singing is going to be even louder and even more kind of boisterous, as it were. And yeah, I think combination of the performance on the pitch and the away fans, as usual, really turned up and backed the team. Both of those factors, I can't genuinely, I don't feel like I can't remember a moment where I was like, okay, the crowd are getting on our backs, and the away fans have gone a bit quiet because either the players on the pitch are doing something, like the Spurs players on the pitch are doing something to kind of lift the crowd, or vice versa. Just, it didn't happen throughout the game from what I can remember. Obviously Spurs came back in the second half and had a bit of a revival, as it were. But yeah, like it was like chalk and cheese compared to the atmosphere when we went in May.
And like quality is one thing, right? Like, being on form and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I remember from last year when we played Spurs was how much sheer desire the Tottenham players had when they're on that pitch. They were so up for it. They were running, they were winning every second ball. They were doing all the things that you expect of a team playing a big game to do. And do you think that was different this time round? Did Tottenham surprise you in kind of their intensity in that first half?
It was, to be honest, mate. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it necessarily surprised me. I think what we saw was what we've seen all season when it comes to Arsenal. Like, I think for me, the focus and the kind of praise really needs to go to Arteta and to how Arsenal essentially negated whatever Spurs were going to be able to do. Like, they set up with 5 at the back, or 3 centre backs and wing backs, and the way that Saka and Martinelli play, they basically just negated. Who was it? It was Sessegnon, and I can't remember who the right back was. Whoever their wing backs were for Spurs, essentially pushed them back into
Doherty, right? Doherty.
I can't remember now. But yeah, pushed them back into a back 5, and I think, sorry, I think I just knocked the mic there, and I think, yeah, we were able to really stop Spurs from being able to do anything. And we know what, like, Conte is a conservative manager, but the way that we set up, where Zinchenko played such a, like, he's been doing it all season from left back, but essentially he is our 3rd central midfielder. And when he gets into that position, like, we just overran them in central midfield, and it was very, very easy. It felt like, from what I saw, it looked like it was very, very easy. Every time we had the ball and we picked it up in central midfield, we were getting it through the lines and up to the attacking players really, really easily. And obviously the 2 goals that we scored sort of came in a similar way, with Partey pretty much playing a really integral part in the goals with his passing and his forward passing through the line. So I think, I mean, a little bit surprised, because I expected more from Spurs. And I think, again, we're kind of repeating what we said earlier, the atmosphere, or the occasion, I expected a bit more. But I also feel like when I actually watched a lot, so I watched, following the game, I watched quite a lot of Spurs reaction. I think it just ended up coming up on my Twitter feed because Arsenal fans were retweeting it, whatever. And pre-match, we weren't that confident, because we've not won there in so long, because of what happened last season, etc., etc. But I don't think Spurs fans were particularly confident either. And I think what they expected to happen happened, where Arsenal, being the better team this season, like you said it when you talked about when you gave your prediction, you kind of started your prediction by saying, ultimately, we are the better team. The stats dictate we're the better team. The table dictates we're a better team. Everything points to us being, we're playing the better football, we're more consistent, everything. But yet you still had the concerns and reservations about what the result would be. But how the game actually panned out followed that trend in terms of form, in terms of, us, essentially being the better team with the better players. So somewhat surprised, yes. But I think on reflection, it was just a top Arsenal performance. Tactically, every player played really, really well. And I think it just, like I said right at the start, it just showed kind of how much we've come on. Like, you look back to May, And you look at the team now, and obviously, look, there's a number of players that didn't play in that game in May that played on Sunday, and they were key players, Thomas Partey being a prime example. But yeah, when you compare the sort of the what's happened in the last 7 or 8 months, it's the development and how far we've come on is unbelievable, really. And yeah, like I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe we shouldn't have been that surprised that Arsenal played the way they did, because they basically kind of did what they've been doing all season, even in the big games.
I agree with you, and yeah, maybe it is a learning experience for us as maybe we've just got to come to that realization, which is a tough realization, because I think we want to be risk averse and we want to be a bit conservative in kind of how we view our team and don't want to get carried away. But we're an excellent team, and maybe we just need to digest it and allow it to, come out when we're reviewing games and when we're talking about our players. Because, when you sort of mentioned it there, it's the level that we've got to now versus where we were 6 months ago. We weren't bad 6 months ago, but the level at which we've got to now in that period of time, it's just an incredibly steep line that we've gone up, right?
Yeah.
It's not it's from, I mean, it feels like from the start of this season we've been, kind of playing incredibly well, and it's not a form thing, it's just that we're really, really good. And I love to see the fact that, there's some of these players that have just taken it to another level, and I don't know whether that's because tactical tweaks have helped them, and I don't know whether it's just because, when you've got other players that are playing well also, it's difficult for the opposition to have a plan to just stop one player. But we do need to talk about a couple of these individuals, right? Because like Thomas Partey has been brilliant all season. But, some games you look at a player and they are just unplayable. That's what it looked like against Tottenham. In that first half in particular, he was absolutely divine. Like, he was walking on water. Spurs couldn't get near him. Anything he wanted to do, he did. Whether that was from a defensive standpoint, whether that was from an attacking standpoint, flicking balls around the corner, playing like crossfield passes, lofting balls with the right amount of spin, intercept, everything. It was just, it just transcended everyone else on the pitch. I mean, how good is this guy now, Miles? Like, I mean, I know he's coming to sort of the latter stage of his career. He's, did well with Atletico Madrid. We've seen patches of, Thomas Partey at Arsenal, but this season has just been incredible, right? And was this one of his best performances in Arsenal shirt, would you say?
Yeah, it was. And I think it's fair that, and completely right that you've called him out. He was definitely a standout player for me. I think what we were saying about Thomas Partey, maybe start of this season, or even previous seasons, maybe last season, is, he has his moments where he's unbelievable, like the way he gets out of tight spaces and how comfortable he is on the ball, especially being a central midfielder. He almost creates time for himself sometimes when you feel like there isn't actually any time for him, if that makes any sense. Like, he beats the press really well. But he personally, and I think maybe we've all said it at different times, he hasn't maybe done it consistently. Injuries has definitely had an impact on that. And also, but despite injuries, I don't think he's done it in the big game, in all of the big games, or basically consistently. But I think what we're seeing now this season, and again, the fact that he's been fit probably helps a lot, is he is now becoming, or has become, basically, him just playing that kind of lone CDM role. For me, I mean, look, I'm obviously biased, but I think he's the best in that role in the Premier League. Like, I'd say he's probably the best defensive midfielder in the Premier League. The only other player that this season could come close is maybe Casemiro. And I've not really seen him play that much, but everything I'm hearing from, people watching United, mainly United fans, is, he's been unreal. He's been the difference as to why United's form and everything has changed for them. And we're going to see them kind of go at it on Sunday, obviously. So that'll be really interesting. But yeah, man, we've praised Partey in the past. I just talked a little bit about some of the things that I love about him and his quality, his attributes, or his really good attributes. But yeah, he's, like you say, I think you put it perfectly. Like, there's on Sunday, and I think we've seen this before, that it's basically like it doesn't look like there's anything he can't do. And he's even this season like added goals to his game as well. Like the shot that he had, oh my God, like that shot.
God, that my word.
If that had gone in,
was that at the other end of you?
Yes, it was. So I didn't even realize it hit the post. Like we kind of figured, isn't, you know what it's like from one end to the other. Couldn't fully tell it hit the post or if Lloris had saved it or what had happened. Didn't even know it was really Partey that had hit it, to be honest. So basically that technique, no, I didn't see it at the time. So obviously I saw it afterwards. And my God, like if that had gone in, that's goal of the season halfway through the season. So like I said, he's got the confidence now to shoot from goal, but even if you take that out of his game or his performances, he's just been this kind of like complete central midfielder. And obviously he's playing in a CDM role, but then he is like, he's the ball carrier. He's the guy that passes between the lines. He's the guy who connects the defense to midfield. And I think the thing that, like, sometimes I've seen a few people compare him to Casemiro this season, and they're basically saying Casemiro is the better like destroyer, and maybe that's true. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen Casemiro enough, but I mean, I'm pretty confident, or not confident, but from memory, even post World Cup, like I think it was the Brighton game, might have been the West Ham game or the Brighton game. I'm pretty sure like a couple of our goals in one of those games came from Partey winning the ball back high up the pitch. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think one of them, he gave the ball away, then he kind of like managed to win it back with a slide tackle. And, even that aspect of his game, like defensively, he's tackling. And I think there was like a couple of really good blocks in the Spurs game as well. Basically like just this like complete midfielder. And he's obviously really excelling in this role now with Zinchenko that supports him when we have the ball, Xhaka in that like kind of left half space, playing more advanced. And I think that was a thing that didn't really work. Him and Xhaka playing together.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah, it didn't really work for whatever reason. It didn't really work. Maybe, because of like Xhaka's limitations and all of, and I think this comes down to like, and I was going to make this point, maybe I'll make it now, but maybe it would have come up later is, these are all decisions. Like when you think about, like we just said, okay, you compare us to last May when we lost at Spurs and we weren't a bad team. We finished 5th in the league. We weren't a bad team. But when you think about where we were when Arteta joined, and when you think about where we were in May, for example, with what happened at the end of the season, and you think about some of the decisions that Arteta's made, Saliba coming back, and right, you're going to be my starting centre back because I've seen what you can do and I like what you're doing in training. So what do we do? And if you think about Tomiyasu and Tierney, they were like mainstay fullbacks last season. And if they were fit, they were in the team. And he's changed that up now with Ben White going to right back. Like, that looks like a masterstroke now. At the start of the season, no one really wanted Ben White at right back. We all
we all had concerns with how he would defend against wingers and thought at some point he would get moved. Yeah,
exactly. The movies made with the Xhaka now, making Erdegaard captain, even just signing Zinchenko and then now, him operating in this role that he's operating in, all of these things, it's pretty like, I don't want to say ridiculous, but it's just seriously impressive. It's just seriously impressive. So I think, he deserves a lot of credit. I mean, look, it's still halfway through the season. Who knows what's going to happen? And we keep like tempering our kind of expectations with that, 18 games in. But in terms of how we're performing and how we're playing in some of the games that we're winning, like it's seriously impressive. And Partey's another example of that, where he's just like kind of found his feet in this role and is really excelling. And like, I guess the thing is, man, he just like has to stay fit now. He has to stay fit for us to be successful this season. That's the stressful thing.
Yeah, and we'll, we're going to record another episode later about transfers, and I'm sure we'll get to that and why that might be important. But is it worth just for a second comparing the trajectory of both these teams? And again, look, I'm enjoying being indulgent, but at the same time, I think it is a really important thing to analyze. We finished below Tottenham last season, and they are in the Champions League as a result. That's significant because it means that you can attract different types of players. If you're in the Champions League, you got a little bit more money as well. As a result of this, like in the summer, Tottenham spent more money than Arsenal. Tottenham spent about 170 odd million, and I think Arsenal spent about 120. So Tottenham is spending 170 million on a squad that's in the Champions League. Arsenal spending 120 on a squad that is not in the Champions League.
Yeah.
Like, if we just take a step back and think about, okay, let's put aside the fact that Arsenal are top of the league and playing probably the best football in Europe right now. Let's just hold that for a second. Where's it gone wrong for Tottenham in your perspective? Because, fine, Conte hasn't been there as long as Arteta have, but Conte's not a transformational manager. Conte is someone who is, he's been around the block. He knows what he's doing. He shouldn't, he's not the sort of guy that I think you employ to change your club from the top to bottom. You employ him because you want to get results and win trophies, and he'll figure out what to do with the squad that he has. Yeah, he'll want to spend money, but ultimately kind of he's not someone who I think is going to require you to change your whole squad. Otherwise, what's the bloody point? But so he's a very experienced guy, has had good players to work with anyway. Kane, Son, as examples, spent good money. But why is it, mate? Why do you think it is that they just look a shadow of what they did last season, but look so far behind an Arsenal team who have spent less?
I mean, on the first question, I don't like. So if you look at where they are in the league, right? They're still. I don't want to give Spurs any credit or anything like that. Look, they're fifth in the league with half a season to go. So there's every chance that they still finish in the top four. I think it's a bit of a there's a bit of a gap between them and I think it's United in fourth, but it's not a gap that they can't claw back. It's not like it's 20 points or whatever. So we could be talking about, come the end of the season, we could be sitting here talking and Spurs might be back in the top four, and ultimately that's probably a successful season for them. So I think it might be a bit early to say like they've completely fallen off. But I think also like, I don't know. For me, I don't think their recruitment's been great. Like you look at some of the players they've signed, like you look at Bissouma, for example, who was quite a relatively big money signing for them. He's just not, I don't know if he's injured or he just doesn't get in the team or no, I don't even know. But
do you remember like a few months ago, Conte said that Bissouma is the only player in his squad that isn't understanding his instructions or something like this? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly. Okay, fine. So, why, question is then not so much why did they sign him, but it looks like it's a signing that maybe hasn't worked out yet, even though it's still early days. Players like Jed Spence, I mean, fine, he was always going to be a squad player or one for the future. But you look at Longley. I've seen Longley play a few times for Barcelona, and he was just always looked like a bit of a calamity defender. And I was very surprised they went for him. It's a bit of a few. I'm not really sure what their transfer strategy is. I mean, obviously they had a couple of successes like Kulusevski, Bentancur. Really do rate them fantastic players. But I think overall, I don't think they've recruited as well as we have. like we keep saying it. We've had a plan, we've had a strategy, and we've been trying to implement that strategy every window. And I think we've pretty much stuck to that plan. And I'm not sure Spurs really have that plan. And I don't know how much you can plan your next kind of 3 or 4 transfer windows when Conte's the manager, because you probably don't know if your manager's still going to be there in 3 or 4 transfer windows. So I think that must have played a massive factor, or has played a massive factor in kind of why they've not been as good this season. But like I said, I still kind of maintain that it's still early, and they may well kind of how they've become a bit of a second half team. They might be a bit of a second half team this season in terms of they might pick it back up. Like Conte's begging for, recruit, like new track. He wants players in, and I'm assuming he means now. He wants some bodies in, or he wants some players in. And if Spurs do, I think they're linked to a couple of players. Like, is it a Portuguese player? I'm not even sure who.
Porro, I think, is a right back,
yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things that a lot of people are saying, people who watch Spurs are saying is, he plays a wing back system, but he doesn't have the wing backs that he wants, but he's got like loads to select from, and he signed Perisic as well. So, that's maybe one of the main reasons I would say that things haven't really worked out for him. And obviously, look, the way that Conte approaches games, it relies on defensive stability first. That's his primary focus for any game, and he plays the same way. He sets up the same way every game. Don't concede. We're not going to concede a goal, and we'll probably score with the attacking players that we've got. And that just hasn't worked. And I think when you look at, like I said, Longley, Dyer isn't really. How good is Dyer? I don't really rate him that much. Davinson Sanchez, a lot of people go on about what's the Argentinian defender's name?
Romero.
Romero. I mean, like, I think he's good. Like he's good, but I think a lot of people rate him just because he's like an arsehole. Like he's just really aggressive and he's just always
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And
He's
I think
a
lot of Spurs fans are sorry to interrupt you, just to add on, but I think a lot, whenever I've challenged a lot of Spurs fans about Romero, because it's not just me. There are I've got other friends who aren't Arsenal fans who don't rate Christian Romero. And I think what a lot of them kind of what a lot of Spurs fans seem to respond to is, I think last season, he was in Jamie Carragher's team of the year. And and as a result, it's like, well, there are, it's not just us that rate him. But I think Romero just seems like one of these guys that he's completely unplanned in how he defends. And he's a very last ditch tackle kind of guy. And he's like fired up, he runs everywhere, and he's probably quite good. He's quite reactive in that way. Like he'll kind of make those last ditch tackles, and he looks like really passionate, all the rest of it. But yeah, no, I don't think he's very good at all. And I thought he was useless against us.
Yeah. Completely agree, man. So I think that's probably for me the two main factors. I don't know if you've got any other.
But again, just to ask you, you mentioned recruitment. You're right. I mean, look at the recruitment. It is a bit weird, isn't it? But why should it be? The thing is, Paratici and Conte have worked together at Juventus and won titles together, right? They've built title-winning squads. They're not two random guys who have been who've been shoved together. They've got a working relationship. They've worked at signing top players. So that's the thing that kind of baffles me. There shouldn't be a case at Tottenham where their transfers have not been strategized and their transfers haven't kind of helped take them onto higher levels, particularly because they qualify for the Champions League. But then again, part of me was wondering that, look, just because they've spent money, again, as we've realized, partly with, some of the players that we go for, sometimes you never really know what happens behind the scenes, and you don't know whether Tottenham actually, there would have been loads of other players they would rather have signed, but they've ended up having to sign some players who are like, I don't know, third, fourth, fifth choice on the list. And some of these players still have big price tags, like Richarlison. They spent so much money on Richarlison, right? Yeah. In what planet is Richarlison worth, I don't know, 70 million or whatever he is? And Gabriel Jesus, a 4 times Premier League winner, at 25 or whatever it is. How is Richarlison worth double? And maybe that's the thing. Everton at the end of the day wanted that sort of money. No one else is willing to pay that. No one else willing to pay that, and then they end up doing it. So I don't know. I agree with you. I think their recruitment's been just a bit silly. But it's quite remarkable. And I'm not really sure. Like, I think you made a really good point, right? It is early in the season, and they are 5th. So, the Conte mentality factor, as we've seen already in this season, means that sometimes like they're able to get points when they really, really shouldn't have. And maybe that might be, something that comes back and they can figure some stuff out and do okay. But I don't think Liverpool and Chelsea are going to continue being as bad as they have for the rest of the season. Chelsea, I think we can talk about this in our next episode. We're talking about kind of more broadly outside of the North London derby, but Chelsea are a team of, although they're sort of mercenaries or whatever, they have got a squad of very good players, and you might just assume that those good players will get them through because they're good players. I don't know, but anyway, it is interesting to see that contrast. Just a couple more things, right? Aaron Ramsdale got man of the match, and there were two. I mean, it's difficult to single people out, but at the end of the day, the 2 centre backs in front of him, I thought were also magnificent. I mean, how, Ramsdale hasn't always, I think, kind of got plaudits for fair reasons, because I think that sometimes, we've questioned aspects of his goalkeeping, like his shot stopping. Sometimes, he's let some goals in where we've wondered whether, a better keeper does better, whatever. But, Gabriel as well has had question marks over from some of the fan base of some of his decision making. Saliba's made a couple of mistakes here and there recently. How good were the 3 of them though, Mize? Like how good were they just kind of stepping up in the biggest game of the season, arguably?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it, mate. Like them and Ben White as well. If you kind of put him into that defensive, Zinchenko too, but obviously his role is slightly different. So all of them were. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I think the second half, Spurs did have a couple of openings, right? And Ramsdale made, I would say, good saves. Like, I'm a bit surprised he was man of the match, to be honest. Like, I know he had a great game, but like, yeah, as we've sort of talked about already, right? There's probably a couple of other, from an Arsenal perspective, I think there's a couple of other standout players. So yeah, but like, yeah, in terms of their performances, yeah, like, I mean, I think you pretty much said it, man. Like, absolutely fantastic. And like, even though, like, I think even when you sort of caveated, when you were talking about Ramsdale and you were talking about Saliba or Gabriel, and you were sort of saying, oh, but there's been a couple of moments this season, but it's been pretty minimal. Like, it's not been won a game, for example. It's a pretty small sample size in terms of these mistakes. Like, there have been, don't get me wrong, and there's going to be always, like, even the, Van Dijk at the moment, I know he's injured, but he's been making mistakes since his injury, whatever. Like, it happens to every single player, even the best. So, I almost feel like, I mean, I haven't even like thought about those mistakes, or you almost can't look at some of those defenders. I can't even look at them, and even if you just look at their performance across the season so far, it's actually, again, like immense is the word that comes to mind. You think Saliba, how old is he? Like, he's 21, I think. 21, centre back in the Premier League, starting every single game in his first season in the Premier League. And we're top of the table, and I think, like, and our goal difference is fantastic, but we don't generally concede many goals either. Like, they've just been very, very solid. So yeah, like, full credit to them as well, man. Like, it's really kind of working at the moment. The system, the protection that we're getting. And I think the other thing that was quite interesting on Sunday, I don't know if you noticed this, but Saka and Martinelli did a really good job defensively. Like, we didn't really have to as much, like, well, they probably didn't have to as much as I thought they would have before the game. But at the same time, we talked about the Spurs wing backs at the start, and when they did push on a little bit, Saka and Martinelli did have to, like, get back quite a lot. And I think that, the fact that we have that in our system, and we're comfortable in the knowledge that those two players are happy to do that kind of dirty work and track back, and they've got the energy and the kind of, they can last a game doing it, going up and down the flank. That is another massive factor as to why we probably kept a clean sheet on Sunday. And obviously Arteta's identified that, knowing that that's how Spurs play, and that's how a lot of Spurs attacks come through their wing backs, and we kind of countered that. So again, full credit to like Arteta, the coaching staff, because like, it was a very, very good defensive performance.
It was brilliant, wasn't it? Right, let's have a quick look at the Premier League table. I mean, Arsenal now played 18, won 15, drawn 2, lost 1, 47 points. Joint top in goal difference. Goals scored 42, that's the second best in the league. Goals against 14, that's the second best in the league. It's extraordinary, isn't it? 8-point gap over Man City. Man United have played the same games as Arsenal and are 9 points behind. Tottenham have played a game more than Arsenal and are, my maths isn't even good enough to do that calculation. 14? I mean, 14 points. Yeah, like, it's incredible, isn't it? It's incredible.
It is. I mean, look, we're getting all the plaudits now, right? You turn on the radio, you put Sky Sports on, whatever, you go on Twitter, everyone's now, Arsenal going to win the league. Oh, they've been fantastic. And look, we have, but it's really, like, you look at the table, and I think if you're any Arsenal fan, you look at the table, you just look at it, and it's like, I'm looking at it now, and I'm like, wow, like, that is an unreal number of points to have got at this stage of the season, or with this number of games played. Like, we could have 50 points halfway through the season. That is wild. And I don't think there's a single Arsenal fan in their dreams, like, definitely not me or you, would have thought that was ever going to happen. So, we said it last week. You've just got to kind of enjoy the ride and enjoy every win, and just hope we can sustain it, until the end of the season. But look, I don't know if you're going to, like, I know we're looking at the league table, but are we going to talk about like title challenge? Or, I know we are in a title race, but how realistic?
Well, let's go for it now. Where do you we're gonna the next episode we do, we're going to talk about the United game, which I think is going to be really important in that equation. But let's just, okay. What do you think right now? Where we are right now?
Yeah.
Title challenge.
Yeah.
Are you giving it as much credibility or more credibility than you were before the Tottenham game?
A slight amount more, I would say, like a little bit more. But it's always unfortunately, it's always going to, for me, it's always going to come down to, it's always going to depend on how fit a number of our players or key players stay. And how, because I think I'm just kind of going on I'm just sort of, I don't want to say assuming, but for me, any big injury to a Partey, and there's probably a couple of other players that fall into that category, I don't think we cope. I just don't think we can cope with the squad that we have now. Maybe for a couple of games, to be fair. Maybe for like 2 or 3 games, yeah. But if it's like Partey's injuries in the past, for example, where he's been out for weeks or if not months, I don't think we cope. And I don't think we can sustain the level of performance. I think a big part of the reason we've been so good this season is because we've had a pretty settled first 11, minus, a couple of injuries like Zinchenko, obviously Jesus. There haven't been that many big injuries. And if that carries on for the rest of the season, then there's absolutely no reason why we won't be first or second or third, in with a shout come the end of the season. But I think, it's always, unfortunately, it's just always, I've got that kind of like, that scary kind of like, if this happens, then I'm not sure we can like sustain this sort of level. And I think City have been like hot and cold this season and recently, but when you've got Haaland up front, even if, like, I don't know what's kind of happened to them in the last couple of games, but if you think that he plays the rest of the season, he stays fit, he's probably still going to get another 15 goals, and then and then you add everyone else into the mix. Like, I just can't see City not turning it on. And I think I said this before, the only reason might be is if we get to the latter part of the season and City are still kind of having like these erratic results in the Premier League, but they're doing really well in the Champions League, then they might put their eggs in the Champions League basket. But what does that really mean for City? That just means that doesn't really mean anything. Like, they've got the squad to deal with both all 4 competitions, or they're out of the Carabao Cup now, but whatever competitions they're in, they've got the squad to deal with it. So I'm not even sure that's necessarily the case. It might be more of a mentality thing where the Champions League, because they haven't won it either, and Pep wants to win it, maybe mentally the focus shifts to the Champions League, but not really not like if we have to make that decision come towards the end of the season, it's like either Premier League, Europa League, and we might have to make a call. We literally might have to rest a number of players for Europa League games or rotate quite a bit when we don't have the squad to do it. So like, I tell you what, mate, Sunday is, like we said, Sunday that just went was big, and it obviously was. But like, you were worried about United before the Manchester derby, and I guess I wasn't as much. Like, I hadn't really noticed their kind of climb as much as you had. And now they won that game and they beat City. That sets Sunday up to be like ridiculously massive. And depending on what happens at the Emirates on Sunday, like if we, I know we're going to talk about it separately, but if we beat them, then I think ask me that question again on Monday or whenever we record, and I think my belief will be a lot stronger.
I think that's a good way to end this episode. So, Miles, I really appreciate that, particularly your views from being at the game. It's always incredibly insightful to hear from a fan who's actually been there and was part of just like what I imagine you'll remember that game for pretty much until the next time we all beat them at White Hart Lane. But it was a great day, wasn't it, mate? And everyone, thank you for joining the pod. Thank you for listening. Stevie has just read out Stevie's last point before we end. It's a great point, Miles. Other than City, you usually have a ridiculous squad. The title is usually won by the team with the least major injuries. Yeah. I mean, it's a good point, isn't it? I mean, when Liverpool have won the league recently, it was a really important point, right? Van Dijk was fit, Salah was fit, Mane was fit. Allison stayed fit, those sorts of things. So it's absolutely so true. Cool. So listen, we're going to call it. We're going to call it there. We are going to release another episode later in the week, everyone, where we are going to be talking about the Man United game, previewing the Man United game. But also, what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about transfers, because obviously we have missed out on a very big transfer target in Mudryk. But we want to talk about what else that might mean for January, but also some of the other rumors that have been floating around, i.e., Declan Rice rumors have been coming up. So we're going to get into that as well. Brilliant. Thank you, Mize. Thanks, you very much. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Take care. Goodbye.
See you later, guys. Cheers.